All right, peace everybody. This is Brother Youssef. I'm back with another video. In this particular video here, we're going to talk about dimensions, and I kind of touched on this in different videos I've done, but I never really went deep into the different dimensions and how they work. And I think if you're on a spiritual path or a metaphysical path, this is a very important thing for you to understand and start researching and studying, so that you can understand these things. And I kind of had a dream last night. Well, I did have a dream last night that kind of made me wake up and want to do a video based on dimensions, based off my, the things I was exploring last night in my dreams. I said, maybe I should do a video to help people understand dimensions and how they work with the third dimension, how they work with each other. So also, I woke up this morning and a subscriber commented and wanted to know when I'm going to do another video. So, I said, wow, that's perfect timing. So, just to let people know, I'm not really a social person like that. Some of my friends call me the hidden master or the hidden teacher, because I got information that people want or need, and I'm not really out there with it. I'm very humble and very keep to myself type of person, for different reasons. But this is one of my callings. I'm here to teach people and help people. So this is what I do. I just don't do it as often as I should. So usually you'll see a video or two every month from me. Depending on how things go, it could pick up. But as of right now, you probably look at like a video or two a month. I'm not really a person that's like to be on YouTube too much. But I love giving people information. So like face to face, we could talk all day, but I'm not a person that like to be on video. I do this because this is my destiny, it's what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's why I do it, and I like to help people. So with that being said, I really want to talk about this thing dealing with dimensions because sometimes you can tell what type of energy you're dealing with in your life based off whether it's a good or bad energy, based off you understanding dimensions and what entities and life forms or energies deal with those dimensions, right? So I'm going to explain. I'm going to get right to the video. I'm going to explain dimensions, and I'm going to give certain key players and certain entities and energies that deal with these dimensions. All right. So, and it's a lot of dimensions. So I'm going to do as many as I can on this video. So to start this video out, let's talk about the first dimension, right? What is the first dimension? Okay. The first dimension is basically a place where energy exists in its rawest form. So let's say that a spirit or a soul cease to exist, okay, which happens all the time. If you don't give your ancestors energy, if you don't feed your ancestors, they go back to the first dimension and their energy gets recycled, okay? It's kind of like a recycling place, the first dimension. You have very low level entities there that are like parasitic entities that kind of feed off of the raw energy down there, and those energies, those entities usually stay there. They don't come here. They just stay in that low level dimension because that's what they're for. They were designed to clean up that area and deal with the energy, kind of like something like bottom feeders you would see in the ocean, right? So the first dimension deals with recycled energy. A lot of entities go to the first dimension. They take the energy from there and they create things out of it. Okay. So if your ancestor, who is a spirit, right? The soul is not the ancestor. The spirit is. The soul goes on to have other experiences. But the copy that you created down here in this physical world, that thing lives on for the sake of the family. As an ancestor. And if you don't feed that ancestor, what'll happen eventually over time is that ancestor will fade away and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So where does this energy go once it fades from the fourth dimension? It goes to the first dimension and it gets recycled back into into the earth realm, the earth energy or the earth matrix. So a friend of mine told me about a movie called Coco, and I saw it, and the movie Coco kind of explains that. The cartoon, a cartoon movie, isn't that funny? Disney, who was a sorcerer, who knew how to use children's energy to get what he wanted. Um, you know, They show you that in the movie Coco. If you don't feed your ancestors, they'll fade away. So the first dimension deals with that raw, unused energy that gets recycled. It's the recycling center. Okay. And then between these dimensions, you have subdimensions, right? But I'm not gonna get into the subdimensions. I'll be talking forever. Um, but the first dimension deals with that, and that alone. It deals with energy. So also souls, right? Some people think the soul can live forever. It can, but if the soul reverses in any kind of way, the energy of the soul reverses, the soul can die. A soul can die. It's an absolute truth. And if the soul's not evolving, it can retard. The soul can retard, and it can go backwards, and it can die. It'll get too many dark facets in it. The soul will accumulate too many dark facets, and the soul will actually go back to the first dimension, and the energy of the soul will be recycled. And whatever entity um, the power to use that energy and recycle it, they'll use it if they have to. But usually they just get their energy from the higher force. But it's a recycling center, in its only words, right? That's what the first dimension is. Okay, nobody wants to go there. It's really a messed up place. It's dark, and the first dimension is somewhere that not even lower level entities like to go unless they have to. It's a messed up recycling center. That's what the first dimension is. Okay. The second dimension is what you call Christians call it hell. Okay. Now let me explain this. I say hell to make you guys understand the energy that this level deals with. Okay, the second dimension is cold, dark. Um, every negative thing and bad thing you can think of exists there, and there are levels in this so-called hell. Right. So I'm not saying hell from a Christian perspective, like a lake of fire. I'm saying hell to help you guys understand this is where a lot of your demons are. Your lower level energies, your low level entities, incubus, succubus. Um, you have some jinns that are down there. Not all jinns are bad. Some jinns are good. Some jinns are bad. You have some jinns. Now you have all these different um, negative entities that are. Some of them are locked down there forever. But also, the second dimension is also has a gateway into the Kalipoff. Right. For those who know about Kabbalah, the dark side of the tree, you can access the other world of the Kalipoff. Um, in the second dimension. So the second dimension is not where the clip off is. The energies of the clip off are there, but to access the worlds of the clip off, you can get there through the second dimension. You can actually get there through almost any dimension, but it's easier to access in the lower dimensions. Not to say the clip off is evil, but their energy is destructive, right? The clip off energy is destructive. If you know what you're doing, you can deal with it, right? But if you don't know what you're doing, then these energies are very, very, very powerful, right? If you're an alchemist and you know how to transmute energy, you know how to deal with the energy, then yeah, you can go deal with the clip off. I deal with the clip off. You just got to be careful, and you got to know what you're doing when you're dealing with the clip off. So the second dimension is basically hell, right? It is where demons go. It is where people go who are like atheists, right? If you're an atheist and you don't really have a conscious level, you don't believe in anything, then you go to a place that doesn't really have anything in it. Now, there are different levels of this hell state where you can see buildings and people walking around, but it's always dark. It's never morning there. It's always nighttime. And I know because I've seen this place, right? And it's always cold. You do have areas, depending on your suffering, that you can go that is like fire. But for the most part, um, the second dimension deals with where people go to suffer. Okay, when you go to sleep at night and you have a really horrible dream, your astral body has shifted into the second dimension, based off of your consciousness of what you watch on TV, negative people you deal with every day, the negative things you deal with every day. Your astral body goes into the second dimension. Okay, that's what the second dimension is. It is nightmares, terror, um, um, demonic energy, right? Destructive forces. All these things exist down there, and a lot of humans go there to be purified. Okay, now you have demons and demonic generals and gods that have their own, place in hell, right? And they have their own system going on in hell and their own territory in hell. There are also deities and gods who exist in this underworld who rule over certain types of or aspects of hell, okay, or aspects of the underworld, okay. So that's what that is. I've been to hell once. I don't like telling a lot of my experiences, but I've seen hell many times. I don't like going there, but I've seen hell, and I even met the god Anubis in hell. Right? I ain't gonna say what he told me, but I met the god Anubis. I've seen the Baron down there, Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi was actually helping people and watching people pass, right? Pass over. Um, I've seen family members down there. I've seen people I know, people I don't know. I've seen people suffering. I've seen sad situations that I don't like talking about in the second dimension. The second dimension is a place where anytime you have a nightmare, you just went to the second dimension. And based on something you watched on TV, which they pulled from the second dimension and brought it to the third dimension, which is the physical world, your consciousness goes there. You watch a crazy super killer movie before you go to sleep, and then you have a dream somebody chasing you trying to kill you, that you're having that experience in the lower astral realms, which is the second dimension. Okay, so many words, the second dimension is a hell state. Okay, this is where a lot of the negative energies that we deal with on the physical world, is where they thrive at. Okay, they also thrive on the fourth dimension, some of them, but for the most part they report to their generals and report to different deities in the second dimension. And the reason why I say gods, because people always think the gods are good. No, there are gods that are destructive, and they're not bad or evil. That's just their job. Their job is to destroy, to be destructive. They call forth hurricanes and tornadoes and tsunamis. These are demonic forces behind that. Okay, so you guys need to understand that destructive energy comes from there. So that's what the second dimension is. The third dimension, we all know what that is. It's Earth, the physical realm. But now you know why the third dimension has so much negativity on it, because the access to the second dimension is so easy. We're so close to the second dimension, right? And then the dimension above us is the fourth dimension, which could be good or bad, depending on, what's going on there and what's happening. So we not even really talk about the third dimension, because the third dimension is where we live at right now. It's the physical realm. It is also a place of suffering. It is also a hell state. I'm just going to be honest with you. The third dimension is also a version of hell, but at the same time, you have an opportunity here. It's more of a prison, right? So you do suffer here and you go through things, but Earth is more of a prison and more of a something to teach you a lesson. You're supposed to have an experience here, and through that negative experience or through that experience period, because you can also have good experiences down here, sex or having children or getting married, and you can have love on the third dimension also. And this energy can make you make decisions in your life, and you learn off of those things. So the third dimension is like a prison school. That's the best way to describe it. It's a prison school. For some people, this prison school is heaven, right? This prison school is heaven. But I don't care who you are. Even if you're rich and famous, you're suffering with something. You're gonna deal with something down here. But that's what you're down here for, to have an experience. Okay. Now let me go back to the second dimension real quick. The second dimension, if anybody ever goes there, which a lot of people are, but if anybody ever goes to the second dimension, one way you can get out of there is you can ask the Buddha for help, right? You can pray to the Buddha. You can pray to a god that you've been dealing with. Usually, if you're dealing with a deity or a god all your life, usually you ain't going to the second dimension. But based on what you did with your magic, you can end up in the second dimension, right? So you can pray to a higher force that can send its angels to help you. And one of those is the Buddha. The Buddha will help you. There are certain prayers that exist in the world, divine world prayers that you can pray that will help you get out of a hell state. Also, if you ever can feel the frequency of love or joy in the second dimension, that can also raise your frequency in that lower state and help get you out of that second dimension. Okay. So we talked about the first dimension, the second dimension, and we talked a little bit about the third dimension, which we don't have to really talk about because we know about, right? So the fourth dimension, right? Let's talk about the fourth dimension, which is which is a very busy dimension. It is like the internet to all the other dimensions because you can access every dimension you want from the fourth dimension. It is like the web or what they call the internet. You can access the past, the present, and the future in the fourth dimension because the fourth dimension is space and time and it deals with time. So I'm gonna tell you guys a big secret that a lot of people don't know. Time travel, right? Yes, time travel exists. But in order to time travel, you must send a third dimensional object through the fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension, once it's sent through the fourth dimension, you will access a certain spot in time that existed in the past. But I'll tell you a secret. You never go to the actual real future or the actual real past. You go to an alternate version of it. Especially the future. The future doesn't exist. It's always being created. But people from the future, right? Now notice what I just said. The future doesn't exist. But people from the future can come here and have an effect on reality. What do I mean by that? The future for us doesn't exist yet. But at the same time, there are parallel worlds and parallel universes that does have futures, right? That basically have an effect on our world, our universe. But they come from a different parallel world from their future, and they come and have an effect on us, which does have an effect on their future. I'll give you guys another secret, another prime example of that. What people call the Anunnaki, right? The Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are beings from the future. That's a fact. Who come to the past. That's why they're so advanced, and they're gods. They're actually scientists. They're like demigods, but they're demigod scientists. They came from the future to fix their karma by affecting our world. So the Anunnaki are basically us in another parallel world in the future, right? Our world doesn't have a future yet, but they manipulated our future by putting their DNA here. They put their DNA in this world, in this reality. Because the Anunnaki come from like the seventh dimension, right? They're more like seven dimensional beings who came into our world and our universe and affected us, right? With something from another reality. All right, I'm not going to go too deep into that. So, with that being said, those beings came here and had an effect on us. And as we evolve, we actually help the Anunnaki evolve. People don't understand that. Or the guys that created us, which are the Anunnaki, right? And what I mean by created us, I mean our physical body. They had nothing to do with creating your soul. They had just something to do with creating your physical body. So as we evolve and grow, they evolve and grow. And that's a whole nother video. So time travel is dealing with people sending an object through the fourth dimension into another alternate world. But every time you do that, you change reality. Because the world that you just send it to has an effect on your world now. That's why it becomes possible in your world to see something. If you send something into the future 5 minutes from now, you can see it because the world that you send it to, the parallel universe that's just like yours, that you send it to, has an effect on your reality now. So you can see it, right? So that's the secret about time travel. But time travel is done on the fourth dimension. That's where they send the objects through. And it's hard to take a third dimensional object and shift it through a fourth dimensional, but it's possible, right? So the fourth dimension deals with time, and it's unlimited space in the fourth dimension. Anything you can think of is going on in the fourth dimension. Anything that you can see with your eyes exists in the fourth dimension. What you cannot see with your eyes exists in the fourth dimension. It is a very busy place. There's a lot going on. There are cities on the fourth dimension. There are heavenly states on the fourth dimension. There are entities that rule over fourth dimension. Some time lords live on a fourth dimension, and they rule over aspects of time and space. Your ancestors who had some type of level of consciousness, when they pass away, they go to the fourth dimension, right? But this is the thing. They still need help because they may not be in a hell state, but at the same time, they're in a place that looks a little nicer, but they still need help. There's nothing going on. Nobody's hurting them or harming them, but there's still nothing going on. Now, there are demonic energies that go into the fourth dimension, and they steal souls. They take people. They trick them and take them back to the second dimension. That's actually possible. but nobody's really suffering on a deep level in the fourth dimension. They are, depending on what you think suffering is. If you think not eating every day is suffering, then that's what happened. And people don't understand that, um, you know, those energies still need energy on that side. So this is why people talk about ancestor money and, heaven and hell notes, and, making an altar to your ancestors, because they need help. They need energy, even if they're not in hell. Some of them are higher fourth dimensional levels, but they still need help, because that fourth dimension is not really high. It's just where you go when you die. It is your astral body, right? So I'm gonna tell you guys something else. You have a body on every dimension. You're just not aware of it. You don't have the consciousness to be aware of it. Once you become aware of it, you can access that body at will whenever you want to. That's a fact, right? So the fourth dimension is space and time. It's a lot going on there. It's a lot I could talk about the fourth dimension. I could do a whole video on the fourth dimension alone, right? But the fourth dimension is basically time and space, and it reflects the third dimension. So everything that is here is also in the fourth dimension. Also, every parallel universe is in the fourth dimension, right? It is a very uh, open, expanded dimension that has access to everything. A lot of cartoons you see, a lot of movies you see, the ideas that people get, thoughts, comes from the fourth dimension. Spider-Man, Harry Potter, the craziest stuff you could think of, Power Rangers, all that stuff exists on the fourth dimension before it came here. Okay, before it came here, it all existed there first. That's what the fourth dimension is. It is where you go when you die. It is also where you go when you dream at night. So if you're not having a dream about somebody trying to kill you and you're not in the second dimension, there's only one other dimension you're going to be in. If you're just an average person, you're going to be in the fourth dimension. And this is why you see your family up there, because they're sleeping too, they're dreaming too, and there's copies of them up there also too. Now your astral body could be doing something totally different than what you're doing down here, but it still reflects itself, right? So when you die, the soul and the spirit separates. Your spirit, part of your consciousness, goes and be with the spirit, right? Because that's a copy of yourself. But your soul is not in your astral body. The soul goes up higher and deals with what it needs to deal with. And if it has to come back down into another body, it does that. But for the sake of your ancestors, your astral copy, or your ancestor copy, stays on the fourth dimension. If the ancestors, if the children or the people down here in your family know what they're doing, they can access you. They can have access to you, your spirit. All right. The spirit is the blood. The blood is the spirit. So they can have access to that part of them, of their DNA, which is you on a fourth dimension. And then your soul goes higher, which is two different things. So that's what the fourth dimension is. And I'm giving you guys, small little, small little ideas and stories about what these different dimensions deal with and what they are, because I think it's important for you guys to know. All right. So that's what the fourth dimension is. Now there are gods that exist in the fourth dimension, that are what you call demigods, also lower level gods. They exist on the fourth dimension, and a lot of them have a lot to do with what's going on down here on Earth. Okay, they have an effect on what's going on Earth. They influence things in the fourth dimension to influence things in the third dimension. Okay, so that's how that works. So let's talk about the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is a dimension of light. I don't know if I'm going to talk about all these dimensions today. I'll skip through what's going on the rest of them. So we'll go as high as the fifth dimension right now, right? So the fifth dimension is a dimension of pure light. Once you hit the fifth dimension, which is also the astral plane, right? It's just a higher level of it. Once you hit the fifth dimension, you're more free in a lot of ways. Okay, and what I mean by that is there's a body that the fifth dimensional body has. Some people call it the light body. Some people call it the diamond body. Some people call it the rainbow body. It has many names. The evolved body, the Christ body. Everybody already has that body. You just haven't accessed it yet. That part of you generates its own light. It doesn't need light from anywhere else. So it is a light body. The fifth dimension, if you ever go there, you will see nothing but beings all shining, right? You will see entities actually shining, and everybody there is emitting their own light. Now, the fifth dimension, the heavens, is considered like a heaven. It's basically considered heaven, okay? But you also have heavens in the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension has heavens that are so beautiful, you don't want to come back to Earth. I know because I've seen them. But that's nothing compared to fifth dimensional heavens. Once you're in a fifth dimensional heaven, you don't need to eat anymore. You don't need to uh, eat or drink, or you don't need sex. You don't need love. Everything is self-generating, right? Everything is self-generating. And if you want to in a fifth dimensional body, you can come back to Earth if you want. Look around, fourth dimension, fifth. You can go up as high as you want to the other dimensions. Fifth dimension is very powerful. Now, um, if you choose to stay in the fifth dimension too long and you don't want to evolve, it'll be harder for you to evolve in the fifth dimension on up because you don't have suffering. Suffering allows you to evolve quicker, faster, right? If you don't have suffering in the higher dimensions, you can still go up and access the higher dimensions and live there and be on that dimension, but it's harder and it takes longer to do it because you don't have suffering. Because if you ever hit the fifth dimension, I can promise you a lot of y'all ain't gonna want to leave. You're gonna think this is the greatest thing that ever happened. Gold mountains. Just imagine mountains made out of gold, and the gold is shining, and the gold is alive, and you can talk to the mountain if you want, right? And the mountain could tell you stories. Like you have access, and you're one with everything, right? And you walk over to a tree, the tree is shining, the tree is emanating its own light, right? And you can have a conversation with the tree, right? And the tree is, you find out the tree is an exalted being, right? The fifth dimension is very gorgeous and very beautiful, and it's pure light. You must be pure light to live there. That's what the fifth dimension is. It is a very evolved realm, and once you get to that dimension to a certain degree, you're free. You're not free all the way, but you're free. So the fifth dimension is a dimension of light, and also the sun is a gateway to the fifth dimension. Of course, you can't fly through the sun in your physical form and go to the fifth dimension, but your astral body could. If your astral body is strong enough, you can fly through the sun, and the sun is actually a gateway to the fifth dimension. All right, the sun is. Um, and the moon, dealing with the moon energy, the lunar energy, is a gateway to the fourth dimension. But also, okay, so let's go to the sixth dimension, and I think I'm barely touch these dimensions, but the sixth dimension is a dimension where you're going to find a lot of the ascended masters, right? You're going to find like Buddha, the original Buddha, and many other Buddhas. Um, you're going to find a lot of gods and deities, but mostly ascended masters. If Jesus was a real person, he would be up there. Krishna, um, all the ascended masters are up on the sixth dimension, which is once again is a beautiful place. Um, Now, I want to say this too. A lot of these dimensions, the gods have their own domains in these dimensions. So let's backtrack a little bit. If you're a person on the third dimension and you're dealing with, let's say, Ganesh, right? Or you're dealing with Kali, right? Kali has a heaven on a certain dimension. It could be the fifth dimension, it could be the sixth dimension, right? Um, Ganesh has his own dimension. He has his own dimension on a fourth, fifth, sixth dimension on up, right? And if you were dealing with these deities, when you die, you will go to one of their heavens. That's how it works, right? So let's say you were devoted to Ganesh or Krishna, right? Then when you pass away, depending on how you dealt with the entity, you could worship the deity. Some people do that; they worship the gods. Some people work with the energy of the god. They know how to tap right into the god source or the god energy, and that god's energy envelopes your body. And when you die, you can go to the realm of that god because you've worked with that energy. Now you have access to it on a higher dimension. So let's say you had an altar up to Ganesh and you dealt with Ganesh all your life, fed Ganesh, Ganesh blessed you. You had a relationship with Ganesh. Then when you die, your consciousness will be on a level of Ganesh. You'll still be able to go get your light body and all that stuff, but you can also now access the domain of Ganesh on the fifth dimension or whatever you want to call it. And you can go there, you can meet Ganesh. And you can be in the heaven of Ganesh, which I'm pretty sure is beautiful. I've never been to Ganesh's heaven, but I'm pretty sure it's gorgeous and beautiful, and Ganesh would know exactly who you are. you know, and you can have access to the deities like that. So that's what happens with a lot of people. They deal with Buddha, then you go to Buddha's heaven. Buddha has his own domain in heaven, right? The fifth dimension, sixth dimension, whatever, seventh dimension. Because really, a god is nothing but a man that became immortal. It's a fact. At one point in time, from different parallel universes, somebody ascended up to an immortal level, and that immortal became a god. And the creator said, okay, I need you to go here, I need you to do that, and I need you to be in this world and operate over this energy. And that's what these gods do. Now, one incredible thing about the gods, when you see them, when you really see the gods in their true form, they look nothing like what the pictures are down here. So let's say you ever meet Ganesh in Ganesh's true form. Ganesh's true form doesn't have an elephant face, but it will look like that to appease to your consciousness, because that's how you accept Ganesh. And that's one of the forms of Ganesh. But Ganesh is an entity that has manifested himself in many forms in different cultures, right? And that's like an oversoul to a degree for Ganesh. So, just like when I saw my spiritual father, he looked nothing like in his true form now. In his true form, he looked nothing like I thought he would. Also, my spiritual mother, Venus, which was a purple deity, where her skin was purple. She was gorgeous. She was really tall. She looked nothing like Venus or Hathor, which she told me she was both of those. She was both of those people. She looked nothing like those people in her true form. It was totally different. But she has been worshipped as those people. Her energy has, right? So these gods exist on these fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, whatever planes, and they have their own domains and their own heavens that they rule over, right? And when the different gods meet, they go to that god's domain, or you can go to that god domain. That's how it works. So in the seventh dimension, eighth dimension, ninth dimension, once you get past the ninth dimension, what tends to happen is you actually break free from quarantine or the illusion. I hate to break it to y'all, but even if you get to the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh dimension, you're still in an illusion. You're still in the astral plane. You're just in a higher version of it, right? And those are still ascended levels. But until you break past the eighth dimension and get to that ninth dimension and up, you pretty much that's the true world. Okay, that's where your oversoul lives at. I did a video before this one called the oversoul. Your oversoul lives somewhere up past the ninth dimension, eighth, ninth dimension, and that place is somewhere that you can't even think of. The beauty of it can't even be described. There's no words. Like, now this is the same when you get to like sixth and seventh dimension, right? Like, these places are the gorgeousness of it is crazy, but there are no words or no thoughts that exist down here to describe what the highest worlds are like.